Hi guys, the date is March 20th, 2026, and in this video I want to talk about my kind of religious beliefs and kind of just my beliefs in general, and then how I kind of see certain religious beliefs and God and all of that. And I think it plays a big part, and obviously you see a lot in the self-improvement community, and it's played a big part in my life just because all my family have grown up religious and are religious. And so I think it'd be something that is really good to talk about, especially in terms of self-improvement and kind of where I'm starting from. So my personal beliefs, just gonna get straight into it. I believe in kind of a deeper order or intelligence or a higher reality behind life. Kind of a reality of how things are, but we can't see how things actually are because of our limited perception. I believe our choices matter, but not in a totally isolated, negative, positive way, where our choices matter in the area of they have a lot of effects, and it's not just as simple as good and bad. I believe that reality has a kind of flow to it and a path it's going to go down, and I believe in presence and awareness and acceptance instead of rigid certainty. And yeah, and then I don't usually, a big thing you'll hear me talk a lot about on this channel is labels, and a big part of this channel is communication between, from my communication, and a lot of the labels I use are very misconstrued, and a lot of media can misconstrued labels a lot and give people the wrong idea of what they actually mean. So a lot of times at the start of a video, I'll describe what I'm talking about when I use the label of, supposedly, like in the awareness, presence, and acceptance video, I will describe what I see that as. And a very important distinction for this video that it's good to make early on is there's a very clear difference between believing in a higher power, belonging to a religion, agreeing with the religion's official claims, and using a religion's language to describe your own experience. All very different things, and it's good to be able to tell those apart, especially when you're trying to, I don't want to say compare, but kind of learn about others' religions to build on kind of, or others, not religions, others' beliefs to kind of build on your own beliefs and understand yours even better. So kind of my views can sit along religion, but like take Christianity, for example, it depends how traditional you want to be. A strict conservative kind of Christianity, it might not work with, because conservatively Christianity is a bit more focused on the physical stuff and certain quotas and certain aspects that don't really agree with my belief. So my beliefs can coexist with Christianity, but they don't usually work well when you compare them to something like an Orthodox Christian, if you see what I mean. And kind of the core of my worldview is life has a structure that's bigger than me. I don't control the whole structure, but I do control my participation in it. It's actually like a really old idea that you can see in things like Chinese Taoism, and I think it's the harmony with the Tao. And you can see it in Buddhism as like relinquishing attachment to things and seeing clearly with the awareness. Then in Christianity, it definitely coincides with surrendering to God, surrendering to a higher power instead of ego. And in philosophy, it's very tied in with the idea that freedom exists within kind of the limits instead of outside of them. It's not about kind of leaving the earthly plane and going to heaven and living forever. It's more, I understand my limits. I don't specifically 100% know if heaven is real. So I'm going to take what my perception can see as real, and I'm going to create my freedom within that. It's not cutting off the idea of heaven, but it's saying that I need to create my freedom from where I'm at, from what my reality currently is. And with the Taoism, it's very flow related and like a river, and I really like that. And a good way to put this is the river exists, but you still choose how you move within it, And that kind of resolves the tension between going with the flow and going down a set path, like a set river, and free will, because you're not reinventing reality from scratch, but you're not passive in it either. You're kind of choosing whether you want to align with your current reality or work with it, or when you make a decision, it just takes you down a different path. That's kind of the gist of it. And I also believe that taking choices, like, or how I explain this, I'm trying to pick up from my notes. Kind of like you look at the free will and the flow and kind of the algorithm of life. That's kind of where it comes from. My view is that there is a flow, so there is a path. There's a current to life, like a deeper unfolding, kind of like algorithm. That is, and it's far bigger than what humans can fully understand. But different actions take you down different currents. I can change the current by choosing different things, and no current is automatically wrong, but trying to resist reality is like clinging to the side of the river. And like avoiding things and denying reality, it's like that's where suffering is born. And that's why I care about awareness and acceptance and presence so much, because it keeps that flow going. Yeah. So it becomes more like, okay, this is going to sound really confusing. I don't know completely what I was thinking when I wrote all this down, but it is all about the choices I make. But it is also all about learning not to fight reality in a way that makes me rigid. So my choices both matter and do not matter in kind of a way you don't really see. It's like they don't matter in the sense that I'm not controlling the universe from like my ego, but like I'm not the center of the universe, and I don't have that much power from within my own limits. But they do matter in the sense of my participation and my alignment and my honesty and kind of the just surrendering to the limits I'm in reality, and then choosing to shape my path from there. The river exists, but you still choose how you want to move within it. That's the same, that's just sums it up. And it's definitely worth looking into Taoism if you haven't. Kind of how Christianity can explain through this lens. So take every label I'm about to say with a grain of salt. But how I kind of align this with Christianity is God, the deeper source of intelligence behind reality, creation, the unfolding of that order, free will, my ability to respond within that unfolding reality, then sin, resistance, ego, clinging, misalignment, repentance, turning back into alignment, faith, trust in a deeper order even when I don't understand it, grace, help, transformation, or movement that comes from beyond my own effort, prayer, atonement, and not just asking for stuff, Jesus, the model or embodiment of complete alignment with truth, love, and God. And that's a big, big difference. I don't see Jesus as kind of the person who was Jesus's son or God's son. I see Jesus as more of a model or embodiment of complete alignment with truth, love, and God. And kind of here's where I would be critiqued by a more orthodox Christian. They would be like, it's not just an algorithm of alignment. God isn't just merely a pattern. God is personal. God, talks to me. Jesus is not an example of alignment. Jesus is like a central, unique thing. And salvation, this is a big one, salvation isn't just psychological harmony. Which, it's interesting hearing a Christian say that it's not just psychological harmony, because when they accept Jesus into their heart, they explain what happens to them, and it sounds the exact same as psychological harmony. I'm not going to get into that, but just thought it'd be worth pointing out. So this interpretation can explain Christianity symbolically and philosophically, but it might not satisfy the people who hold it in more of a literal sense. That's what I'm saying. Kind of something I wanted to talk about was, in a lot of my videos, a lot of people, I talk a lot about my problems and how I'm solving them, but I find a lot of people commenting stuff like believe in God, or trust God, or reach out to God, or they say like Romans 1:2-7. And my kind of annoyance with these comments, it's because that phrase is being used as a slogan instead of actual help. I'm wrestling with like suffering and truth and like how to live, but people answer that with a bumper sticker, trust God. And it's just like, it feels very empty. Not because it necessarily God is empty, but the responses, And yeah, that's just something I wanted to point out. So just like, I'm not like trying to complain or anything, but I'm just pointing out that it doesn't really do very much when you do comment something like that. But I would love to read comments about people's beliefs in that, of course. That would be more ideal than trust God. So for my beliefs, what I would kind of go into labeling that, it would be a kind of blend, if you want to put a label on it, a blend of Taoism and like the Taoist flow of life, the kind of Buddhist non-attachment, and the Christian moral and spiritual meaning. If you were putting a label on it, that would be where I kind of closely coincide. Yeah. But I mean, I'm 18 years old and I'm still forming my beliefs. And to put this in kind of a paragraph, I believe there's something bigger than us, some deeper order, some higher reality, but I don't think a label captures it perfectly. I'm influenced by Christianity, Taoism, and Buddhism, and I care a lot about living with awareness, acceptance, and presence, and honesty and authenticity. Or maybe a slightly firmer way of saying it, I believe in God or a higher power, but not in the way people often talk about it. I think life has a deeper order, our choices matter within it, and a lot of suffering comes from resisting reality rather than working with it. Yeah. Kind of a useful way to separate my beliefs is I believe in a higher reality and order. I believe choices matter, presence, acceptance, and clinging creates suffering, like trying to go against the flow. But I am still unsure and not kind of aligned with God personally and Christianity uniquely, and kind of like what happens after death. And I definitely don't like shallow slogans, pressures to perform belief, and pretending to have certainty that I don't have. Because I'm straightforward. I'm not going to say God is the one true ruler and I'm going to go to heaven when I die and other people are going to go to hell. I don't have that kind of certainty. I can have faith and I can have belief, but nobody has that certainty, or not that I know of. The next layer is when you go into religion, sometimes there's different kinds of truth. And religion gets messy when people act like all these truths are the same. There's historical truth. Did this actually happen? There's symbolic truth. What does this represent about the values of like suffering, sacrifice, forgiveness, ego, love, or even reality? There's psychological truth. Does this change how a person sees themselves and their lives and live their lives, Institutional truth or power. How has this been used by groups or leaders or systems like the church? Then like a lot of religions or a lot of religious arguments, they get really, I don't know how to say it, but stupid, because they jump between the truths. Like they jump from a historical truth to did this actually happen to psychological truth. Does this change how a person see themselves or how they live their lives? And that can, yeah. Even if I'm still unsure what I believe literally or metaphysically, I can still see the deep value in the kind of like the stories and the Bible, and that I see the value and I see the meaning. I care less about, forcing certainty on what can't be known, and more about what these teachings reveal about how to live. Why I don't want cynicism to become the whole frame. It is true that humans often use religions for control, but I don't want to make that the whole frame, because it's easy to accidentally flatten everything into cynicism, okay? So I don't want to be like, oh, it's all corrupt. Religion's it was just created to control the masses, and I don't want to be like that. because religious is human interpreted, which means that it has all the human qualities of the good and the bad. And because, yeah, like the human qualities of community and meaning and wisdom and healing, but there's also the human qualities of fear, control, and manipulation. It is both. Kind of like, and I want to talk about like the threshold of understanding that we can't cross, like the limit to being human. Like there are limits to what humans can know for sure. That's a given. That does not mean nothing is true. It means we shouldn't pretend to have certainty where certainty is not available. And so the worldview kind of becomes something like there may be a higher reality or a deeper order. Humans have limited access to it. Religions are humans' attempts to interpret it. Those attempts contain a mix of wisdom, distortion, psychology, and power. And the goal is not blind belief or total rejection, but kind of an understanding and a discernment. And the real value is what helps us live, and the real value in all of this is what helps us live more honestly, presently, and with better alignment with reality. The kind of cleanest one-liner to sum this up: I'm interested in what is spiritually true, psychologically useful, and honest about the limits of what we can know. Then I want to talk about how perception matters, but that does not mean reality doesn't matter. Because obviously there's a gap between how we see reality and how reality actually is. But when I say kind of perception matters, I'm not saying reality does not matter. Our access to reality is always filtered through our perception, as we know. So stories, symbols, teachings, all of these matter because they shape that filter on how we see reality. Otherwise, like, people would hear symbolic and think fake because symbolic is not part of reality, you know, but it is an important part. So I'm not saying Christianity is just made up, but it is useful. I'm saying even where I'm not certain about the literal claims, I can still recognize the religious traditions that may hold deeper observations and about like human nature and suffering and morality and surrender and meaning that is kind of shown. And then, yeah. And another point I want to add in, so I'm just reading through my notes, seeing if I can, kind of why the deepest truth would not belong to one label. Yes, there is a historical idea of Jesus dying on the cross and the value of people would get from that. But we also see similar things in other people's actions and stories and films and all different parts of humanity. And we can take the same lessons from many places. Because if what Jesus stood for and represented is the fundamental truth, then we wouldn't just see it in him. We would be able to see it everywhere. And I'm not dissing it, but I'm just putting the spotlight on the meaning of it. So I want to talk about these values and this kind of thing, like the true core behind the physical stuff, and kind of like how it's displayed in other parts of the world. So take God. If God is real, or if there's some other higher power, then it would make sense that it would not be displayed in only one spot, or with only one label. It would not just be one human created label, like one label that rules them all, It's like, sorry, I'm trying to communicate this properly. Just at the core of it, at the core of what is ultimate, what is divine, what is deeper than us, they're not going to fit under one single event or one single person. It's you're gonna make these connections. You're going to see something here, like Jesus dying on the cross, see what it represents, what meaning it has to you, and then you're going to see something over there, and you're going to make that connection, and then you're going to see different parts of your life that are better than others, and you're going to see, oh, these parts have similar values, and you're just going to make those connections. And I think that's where you'll find the most truth. So yeah, this is a bit of a long video. I'd be surprised if anyone ended up watching the whole thing. But yeah, I think I've kind of summed it up on my personal beliefs and views and what I see about religion. I'm trying to get better at communicating this stuff and read my notes while I'm explaining them. But I understand that, like, sometimes my communication doesn't always come across, and sometimes I don't explain things as well. So if there's a part that people took offense to with something I said, I just want people to know that I had no intention of being offensive, but certain, it just may have been of a miscommunication. But yeah, that's kind of all I wanted to cover today. That's the end of the video.